After primary elections, it's traditional in American politics to hold a unity event. The party brings together the previously warring primary candidates so they unite in their common enmity toward the real bad guy, the guy from the other party for the general election. That's how we do things here, generally speaking. That is dog bites man in American political news. If after the primary, the losing candidate refuses to do the unity event thing, if candidates from the same party keep taking shots at each other, even after one of them wins the primary, that is not normal. That's man bites dog. And that is happening all over the country right now in Republican politics. In Arizona, John McCain, of course, beat back a primary challenge from J.D. Hayworth at the Republican Party's post-primary unity events in Arizona. No J.D. Hayworth. Not only was J.D. Hayworth not there, according to the Arizona Republic, Mr. Hayworth was, quote, singled out and mocked from the podium by the MC at one of these so-called unity events. Hey, Hayworth voters, make sure you come out to vote for John McCain. So unity in this case means the losing candidate not only doesn't shake hands with or publicly support the party's nominee, he doesn't even show up. He is absent and he is openly insulted from the podium. In Florida, a post-primary unity rally in Tampa was planned for the day after the election. So the whole Republican Party could rally around the guy they all apparently assumed was about to be the new Republican nominee for governor, State Attorney General Bill McCollum. But then primary day happened, and Bill McCollum lost. He lost to the anti-health reform activist and disgraced former hospital executive whose company was hit with 14 felony charges dating to his time in charge. He lost to a man named Rick Scott. Once it started looking like Republicans might have to say they were uniting around that guy, around Rick Scott, the unity rally was called off because of, logistics or something. The guy who Rick Scott beat, Bill McCollum, then told reporters the day after that rally was canceled, he told them, quote, I still have serious questions about issues of Rick Scott's character, his integrity, his honesty. Unity. U-N-I-T-Y. U-N-I-T-Y. Then there's Nevada, where the Republican nomination was Sue Loudon's to lose, you will recall. She did lose it. Chickens for checkups, anyone? When it came time for the post-primary unity dinner at the Nevada Republican Convention, it was Sue Loudon running away for once, not the Republican Senate nominee Sharon Engel. Ms. Loudon did not show up for Sharon Engel's supposed Republican post-primary group hug. And that's a move that really sends a message in a state where you can actually go to the polls and vote for none of the above. None of these stories fits the big narrative that's being spun about this year's elections, about Republicans on the march. In a lot of states, it's more like Republicans at each other's throats. But don't let those facts hit your good story in the butt on its way out the door. Joining us now is E.J. Dionne, Washington Post columnist and senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. E.J., it's really good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good to be with you.
You wrote a column last week about how the people who are trying to come up with this year's big trend stories, big political trend narratives, are trying to come up with one narrative that fits both parties. Is part of the reason that we're not hearing stuff like this reported too much because this is a pretty one-sided story? It's mostly happening on one side of the aisle?
Right. Well, I think that one size fits all is rarely works in any product. And I think you've had a narrative that says this is an anti-incumbent year, it's an anti-establishment year. But you have two completely different things happening in the two parties. The Republicans are going through an insurrection, and the Democrats aren't. The Republicans, Ronald Reagan famously joked that the problem in his administration is that the right hand didn't know what the far right hand was doing. And what you got here is a right Republican Party and a far right Republican Party. There was a lot of trauma in that party after George Bush. Many of us thought, well, maybe now they'll seek more moderation. But most of the moderates left the Republican Party over the last 10, 15 years. They're almost all conservatives. And so you have people in the party saying this place isn't conservative enough. And they're having these primaries knocking out candidates who probably would have had a better chance in the general election.
It feels to me like not that surprising, especially post-Bush and post post-McCain, that the Republican Party would be having a sort of internal civil war about how right-wing they're going to be. The thing that's hard for me to understand is why this few months out from the election, I mean, it's late August right now, the election's in November, they're not able to attend unity rallies with each other. They're not able to say the most important thing is beating Democrats. They're still fighting even when it's losing them elections. We saw that in that New York 23 special election. We're still seeing that now heading into the fall. That's what seems surprising to me.
Well, you know, adversaries are in the other party, enemies are in your own party, and that's how Democrats used to organize things. Will Rogers famously said, "I don't belong to an organized political party, I'm a Democrat." Well, this kind of sort of radical sectarianism, which used to be much more on the left, is now a real habit of the right. There were all of these purity tests. And then the other thing is some of these primaries were just vicious. Rick Scott really attacked Bill McCollum in a way that McCollum, and I can't particularly blame him, just doesn't want to forget. Lisa Murkowski up in Alaska feels the same way about Joe Miller. So primaries can leave these kind of scars, and in this case it's scarring at a personal level overlaid with this ideological fight between right and far right.
When we are seeing this as the result of these primary campaigns on the Republican side, there's always a little makeover, a little moderation makeover that has to happen. Really, this is one of those cases of candidates on both sides in terms of having what you need to be able to tell your base to win the primary versus having what you need to be able to tell a general election voting audience for the general election. Are we going to see very dramatic makeover efforts for conservative candidates who beat more moderate challengers in the Republican primary? Or are these folks so dedicated to being seen as very, very conservative candidates that they're really going to resist the moderation makeovers?
Well, for about 5 minutes on Sunday, I thought Glenn Beck was deciding to move to the center, but he couldn't stay there. I mean, what you're seeing in a lot of cases are some of these candidates going almost silent. Rand Paul, after the interview with you, didn't make a whole lot, that was some months ago, has been a lot more cautious. But they're stuck with, in this age of ours, it's very easy to find old videotape. It's much harder, I think, than it used to be to abandon old positions. And I think some of these candidates on the right end of the spectrum really believe this stuff, so they have some aversion to giving up on it.
Washington Post columnist E.J. Dionne. E.J., it's always great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.